Hello, beautiful YouTube. Hello, beautiful YouTube. It is Emily. I hope you're having a wondrous moment. I am excited to talk about a few different things today, a few different topics. They are unrelated and co-related, and I hope that they will give you some food for insight and also some creative inspiration for how maybe you could benefit this earth at this time. Okay, so the first thing I want to talk about today is an AI ethicist by the name of Tristan Harris. If you are not familiar with Tristan Harris and his message, I would highly, highly, highly recommend that you read some of what he's been writing about and studying all the way back since his time working, I think at Google or Facebook, as talking about what is ethically okay to do with the way that we design AI, such as like the infinite feed scroll, like just you could keep going and going, it just automatically loads, and how that impacts brain rot and the hijacking of people's dopamine centers in their brain. Okay, so all the way back a long time ago, and now his message on AI, as he's been very deep in the field for many, many years, is completely compelling. And he really talks about this anti-human agenda and what's going to be playing out. So I want to highlight two things that he talks about and also just tell more people about him so that you can go listen to what is going on behind the scenes, because sometimes you need an expert in a field to know what's actually happening. And so one of the things he talks about is this idea that in the old world, we used to think of plants and animals and all of life, even rocks, as being imbued with spiritual essence and life. But when we started to whip and beat an oxen for 10 hours a day and make it work for us, we had to that oxen could no longer be a sacred being, because if it were, then that would make us unsacred for harming and using a being for our own benefit. He compares what is happening here, this othering, right? You have to other something to therefore make yourself feel like you're better than it or you're more empowered than it. And so this also tells us a little bit about what the clue is in terms of coming back into our own sacredness as human beings and being able to choose with our own free will choice and spiritual sovereignty the type of future that we would like to see for humans. So this is what's interesting about Tristan Harris's research, is in the best case scenario. Okay, so say that AI doesn't do anything. It's going to be windy. I'm not sure if it's about to rain or like sun will come out, so we'll see. So in the best case scenario, no type of AI like harms or existentially creates like a very damaging threat to humanity at large. What will end up happening is humans will end up being organic nodes. Okay, Elon Musk has a term for this. It's called cybernetics. So human beings will be part of cybernetic systems where they are fueling with their attention and engagement the data mining that AI needs. It's already happening in many ways. Like you could think of, TikTok or X or Instagram or Metaverse as a cybernetic thing that is taking people's time, attention, data, hacking their dopamine systems, etc., and kind of using them in a way that instead of taking a walk in nature and seeing a beautiful sunset or, creating a fresh lemonade or taking a dive into a pond and swimming or, calling friends over for a fire and having a fire and singing songs on the guitar, instead of doing these things, people are just lonely behind screens. And like this interaction right now, like I will say screens have their place, but how much do they have their place? Because screens allow us to share and communicate our ideas, but at the end of the day, this interaction that occurs through here has its boundaries and its limits. And so this idea is that if everything goes great, humanity will then serve AI in this cybernetic way. And yeah, maybe there will be a universal income. So then like maybe people will become painters and poets, and everyone will now have the opportunity to devote themselves to an art form. Okay, that could be maybe like the highest hope for humanity. Perhaps. Okay, now you'd have to think about the way that Divine Source Creator creates beings. And does Divine Source Creator of all life create every single human being to be a poet and a painter? No, a lot of people have absolutely no desire to be poets or painters. Some do, and that might feel like, oh, I would love that. And others might think like, oh my gosh, that is not my divine essence. That is not my God-given birth plan and blueprint. That is not what I'm here to be doing. And so that can actually cause like a great collapse of internal stability. I don't know. Okay, this thing is like, I, Emily, am very cautious about what is going on in AI because I do a lot of research on what kind of corners are being cut and all the different experiments that are coming out that are showing that these AIs are fundamentally immoral. And why are they immoral? Well, they're immoral because our society at large is deeply immoral. We've lost integrity and virtue. And there are even people on our planet who argue that we should lose these guiding principles of beauty, truth, and goodness because that allows us to be free. But again, and I say this a lot because it's one of the core truths that I feel like my divine self often really anchors within my heart. What is freedom if it goes against another sentient being's sacredness or free will choice? Like, what is just doing what you want with no moral or consequence if it actually harms what is truly sacred in this world? Okay, and a lot of what is going on in the AI agenda world is actually further desecrating what woman is, to the point where in a transhumanistic world, they might think that inorganic clone tanks can make human beings better than loving mothers. Okay, people are already opting to have relationships with AIs and are already, having intercourse with robots. And there's already this really fascinating thing that is occurring because people don't want to have to confront what's in our hearts to confront. Because the heart also, as much as it contains love, it contains grief, it contains sadness about our lives and kind of what's going on our planet, and we're all connected. So people in a different part of the world being bombed, that's grief in our heart. Okay, we might be repressing that grief, we might be denying it. But when the heart is awake and the heart is awakened, then you have to confront these things. Because that's actually your beauty and power, is your humanity. That's your beauty and power, it's your humanity, okay? So, but to confront everything in the heart, to fully clear it, to fully purify it, to fully awaken it, it requires us to come back into virtue and to an integrity and to understand our own moral code as human beings. And also, I believe we have to rejoin ourselves with Source. That's just like part of what is the gift of even being able to be in a human body. And there are so many souls that are just like waiting to get down on this planet to have the opportunity to come get this spiritual education if you take it. It's here for your taking if you want it. But a lot of people, they don't want that because they cannot face looking at themselves and seeing themselves as they interact with other people and perhaps other animals and the environment and the harm that they may be doing. But even if that's your case, then you look at yourself and you're like, wow, I've been doing a lot of harm. There is forgiveness. And forgiveness is the next thing that I want to talk about today. So I feel like I have had a lesson in what forgiveness is. And one thing that just like allowed me to fully forgive, something that I think, everybody, I'm not going to make myself special here. I just feel like we all have really horrible, shitty things that happen to us. And so we all have to forgive. And actually getting the opportunity to learn the spiritual initiation of forgiveness is quite powerful. So I wore these beautiful cross earrings today because of a story about Christ that Saint Sri Kaleshwar, Swami Sri Kaleshwar shares that when Christ was being nailed to the cross, one of the people that was putting the stake in and hammering it hit like a vein and blood spurted out on him. And the blood touching him immediately healed him, like healed his soul essence. Like he became like a healed, enlightened person by receiving Christ's blood on his body. I mean, this is a lot of what's going on in Israel, whether you think modern day Israel has anything to do with ancient Israel, that is the place where Christ's blood spilled. Therefore, that is a holy land, they think. I myself have really complex and complicated feelings about the crucifixion, because when you study the actual history of the lived Yeshua, the Nazarene, and his actual reason for being crucified, it in no way lines up with the story that the conquerors who conquered then told. And the big shadow of Christianity is colonialism, because the Roman Empire colonized much of the world. And so a lot of people who have Christian values have this really terribly deep shadow of colonial thinking. And they want to exterminate, all other cultures and all other spiritualities. And in my book, any spirituality that does no harm to self and does no harm to other in its pathway towards yoking and unifying with divine source, like to me, I don't care what you're doing spiritually. If your religion, your practice, your path, if it does no harm to self and it does no harm to others, it's a perfectly valid path, in my personal opinion. Okay, but that was a tangent. What I wanted to talk about was forgiveness. Christ said to this man, according to Sri Kaleshwar, when his blood splashed on him and he received this miraculous healing, he said, how could I do what I've done to you? How could I, what am I doing? And he just, as he was being crucified, he said, I forgive you. And for me, forgiveness really, there's something about forgiveness that I want to share, because it took me a really long time to forgive something that had occurred in my life. And then I realized you'll never really forgive what people have done that is truly unmoral and lacks integrity and has no virtue and is without consciousness. Okay, you don't need to. You don't need to forgive what people did to you or what someone did to you, the action they did. The reason that you forgive them is because you get to this point where your heart has a realization that they would not have done the thing they did if they had been given the opportunity to receive what they needed to receive to be a integral, virtuous, moral person. People who do awful things that harm others, spiritually, emotionally, mentally, or physically, they are lacking something that they need to be kind and virtuous and loving to all sentient beings and to respect all life. And a lot of what's going on the planet is people think that, and I'll talk about toxic patriarchy here for a minute. And I want to remind everyone that I go hard on the toxic patriarchy. And it's not just men in the toxic patriarchy, okay? It's also women. And it's not that I don't love and value men, especially good men who have virtue and integrity and are doing a lot to protect this earth, like Tristan Harris. Like, seriously, go listen to this AI ethicist's understanding of what's happening. That is a good man on our planet who cares about human beings. And there are many good men out there who care about women and children, and women and children's emotional health and mental health and spiritual health and physical health. But there's this idea in a toxic patriarchal culture that if you don't punch your wife in the face, that you're off the hook. You did no harm, but maybe you're verbally abusive, or maybe you're emotionally abusive, or maybe you're spiritually abusive. What is happening to these people who are in war zones? What is happening to their mental planes, their emotional planes, their spiritual planes? Is anyone thinking about that? Sure, their body survives the war, but what is the impact of that? But again, this is a school. This is a spiritual school that we have all chosen to be in. And so even though many of us have gone through the veil of Maya and we do not come in with full remembrance of our past lives and our Akashic records and the history of our soul and the reason our divine soul was created and its purpose, many of us are given the opportunity to come into the knowledge and to come into the wisdom and to have the spiritual initiation that reminds us of who we really are. And that is beautiful. That is worth it all. And we can forgive because we can understand that people that do harm are just miserable. They must be. They must be miserable to cause such misery. And there's something about just being able to forgive because people didn't have what they needed. Because generally, people do the best they can with what they have. And when people are severely negligent, or they severely abuse, or they, do something that is reprehensible, they're not conscious. Because anyone with an awakened heart that was conscious would not do the things that they did. And to not have an awakened heart is deeply painful. Okay? So this is my tip on forgiveness. Forgive them, not necessarily for what they have done, even though Jesus said, "Forgive them, Father, for they know not what they do." But really what's being communicated there is they wouldn't do it if they knew what they were doing. So that's why I think, I pray most days that people who are leading this AI thing, people like Musk, people like Altman, I'm forgetting the Anthropic guy's name, these types of people, Zuckerberg, I pray that they have awakenings. I pray that peace will be invoked within their heart, because these people need to come into the conscious awareness of the existential threats that they are placing on spiritual, mental, and emotional and physical bodies, doing what they're doing for money. For money. Make no mistake. There's a lot of greed involved in this. Okay. So we did Tristan Harris. We did forgiveness. And then the final thing I want to talk about within what's going on in masculinity and how masculine beings could start to really help this earth. And 76% of the people following me are male. So I am speaking to you males out there. Can you start calling your brothers out when they are doing unvirtuous, unmoral, disingenuous, lacking integrity things? Instead of you like knowing that some guy, fucked two hoes on Friday night at the same, they didn't know about it, instead of being like, cool bro, could you be like, sick bro? Like, could you stand up? Like, why did the Jeffrey Epstein thing happen? Because powerful people around him turned a blind eye. They didn't speak up. They didn't say, no. What you're doing to those young, beautiful women is wrong. Okay? In masculine culture, there tends to be this macho thing where men actually give men props for negative behavior. The brotherhood, the virtuous integrity of brotherhood is like calling your brother out when you see him deciding that he's going to dump 10,000 chemicals into a spring nearby a water well for his ease and convenience and more money making. Where's someone just calling that out and being like, no, please don't do that. Like, that's not cool, bro. Or like, wherever you're situated in your life, okay, you might not be in a CEO hearing like things being talked about how they're going to manipulate people's brainstems and hack their dopamine centers. But I sure as hell hope that if you're in a room like that, you stand up and say, no. And a lot of people are quitting these AI companies. Like, there are a lot of people who are just spontaneously resigning, just being like, I cannot just stand by and watch you desecrate humanity without standing up and saying something. Because if we just started calling out, and this is for women too, calling out brothers and sisters when they're doing things that are just wrong, we live in a world of polarity. There can be deep harm on this planet. When you see another person harming someone in any way, physically, emotionally, mentally, or spiritually, call it out. Say something. Make people rise. Yeah. That is the end of the message. Okay. For anybody who stayed all the way to the end, thank you for being here, and please give a thumbs up, leave a comment, send to somebody. All of these things help boost this, return the energy exchange for being here, and I am appreciative and grateful. And yeah, I know that humanity is in a really precarious place, but I want to remind you that you have choice. You absolutely have choice. And you do get to choose. And so when it feels like you're being sucked into like a pendulum, like, I don't know if anybody's read Reality Transurfing by Vladimir Zeland. He talks about this idea of pendulums. Okay, when it feels like you're being sucked into the AI pendulum and you feel like that's the only way forward, just remember that you can choose to embody your divinity and to really open up all of your channels in your body, all of the meridians, all of the vayus, which are the winds of the body, all of your nadis, which are similar to the meridians, the channels, your chakras. You can actually choose a different path, which is a path united with divine spiritual energy of soul. You don't have to choose an anti-human transhumanistic future. And the more people who are just like resisting that suck of the pendulum, the better. And this doesn't mean that we can't have good and tested and valid and ethical and virtuous and integral AIs. But to be clear, right now on planet Earth, we don't. And companies are selling your data, and they are creating profiles about you and giving them to governments for universal surveillance. And there's all types of things happening, like Oracle buying hospitals to get hospital data so that they can bypass HIPAA laws. Like, these things are not okay. What are we doing about it? You know, what can we do about it? Well, we can say we don't consent, and I don't consent, I don't give permission, and I don't choose this. And then choose the path of nature. Spend more time in nature. Let the natural world create spontaneous synchronicities for you. You know, call the people you love. Tell them you love them. Do something nice for your mom. You know, go see your grandma if you still have a grandma. Like, grow a garden, you know? Get some bees. Do some honey. Like, things like that. Like, there are things we can do. And these things actually do make a difference, because you're starting to be able to see people who are alive with soul and people who are letting that essence within them fade. And the people who are bringing the soul in and, you know, vibrating that light of consciousness, those people can be inspiring for others on our planet. And so maybe we're headed into some really dark times, but may we be lights in that darkness. Okay. Yeah. Thank you. I hope you have a beautiful day.